Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? It's Kenny Roy here. We're rocking and rolling and growing and flowing and showing. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Just gotta get it on. Welcome to the AnimGym webcast for the month of November. It is December 5th. It's a little afternoon. I am sorry. I'm having the biggest problem with my USB web camera's bandwidth. If anyone knows a little bit about how to fix USB controllers bandwidth, I'd really love to know how. I seem to have the worst problem with that, but at any rate, we can talk about that later. This AnimGym was the topic was a girl jumping rope. I wanted to do something that was a little bit of a twist on a physical test and see how we could flex our muscles, and adding that girl aspect to it, I think was just enough of a twist to throw some people for a loop. I haven't watched any of the entries because I like my first kind of impression to for you guys to be able to see that first impression and kind of get an unadulterated look at you know, how your animation is kind of coming across. So that's the way we do it. And if you don't know what the AnimGym is, it is an initiative here on KennyWay.com whereby we are going to be exercising and practicing animation rather than trying to just like jump head first into something like a gigantic shot or project that we're not ready for. We want to put our workflow through even practice. Right? We want to have practice on polish as much as we have practice on blocking, and that's very hard if you're starting a lot of shots but finishing very few, right? So that is the idea here. That's what we're trying to accomplish, and I think we're doing very well. You'll see that there are 4, 8, 12 entries this month. That's up from last month and up from the month before that. So it's getting more and more popular. But that does mean that I do need to jump into the entries right away so that we can be sure that we're going to get to everybody. Does anyone remember what order I went in last time? I think I did reverse alphabetical order last time, right? So I can go alphabetical order this time. Is that what it was? Can someone help me out? Remind me. Yeah, okay. So we went reverse last time, so we're going to go forward this time. And remember, if you want to participate in the AnimGym, the only criteria is that you just join the forums of KennyRoy.com. That's where it's all taking place. The critiques here are for the members of KennyRoy.com. If you are a free trial member, you still get a critique on your AnimGym entry. I want to encourage people to be doing the AnimGym even if they're on their free trial. Okay, so if you want to participate, though, all you have to do is be ready to animate and ready to work hard and give critique and feedback to others. All right, so jump into the forums if you want to do a little bit more of that. Okay, but without further ado, let's start rocking and rolling. First up is Anthony Sato. Here we go. Make sure that everything is a good size. Okay, there. Ooh, okay, cool. Right off the bat, I think this is super strong. Anthony, you're always doing very good work. And also, everybody, please notice how no time was wasted on creating a jump rope rig. No time was wasted. Just the handles, that's fine. That's perfect. I feel, though, and this is going to, maybe this will kind of like skin your butt a little bit, Anthony. I feel a little bit, though, like the rope is going too slow. I feel like there's this moment up here where it's hanging just a little bit too long. Let me loop this. Oh, loops beautifully. Really nice work. So, okay. You know what? It might not be going too slow. The double bounce, I wonder if we're going to see a lot of double bounces. The double bounce is kind of, I guess, what makes up for that slow rope. Immediately, very, very, very good reaction. I'm getting this weird kind of silhouette. Might be the render. Might not be, but I'm getting just like this little bit of a feeling that we're seeing like this angle in the hips that as she moves on, it just kind of like is still there. Does that make sense? And like there's just like kind of this shape happening right here that's making it feel like the hips through the entire cycle are kind of like tilted to the left, especially right here where she does the big jump. This is too much bend in the spine for sure. This kind of slope right there, it's too much, and the reason it's too much is because you have to be very careful about silhouette. When we're looking at the silhouette, we don't have really much to explain foreshortening, okay, and how foreshortening transitions into like a profile to camera pose change, okay? So if you look at my hand, there's like no pose change really here. It's almost just like scaling the hand up and down, right? But if I move it the exact same distance, this is very, very, very little impact on silhouette, right? But this is the exact same distance. This is a very drastic change on silhouette. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because when she does this big jump, we don't account for foreshortening in this small amount of time, and it's looking like instead of her back is arching, which is what I think is going on, it's actually looking like this curve through here is actually looking like her body is going like this, right? Instead of towards us, and the little bit of curve we're getting is because it's so much further towards us in foreshortening. We're actually, our eye almost always wants it to be a substantial silhouette change, right? With posing profile to camera. That's kind of what our eye is looking for. So I would say that this is kind of like one moment where the amount of bend that you're doing in the spine is a little bit too much. And then throughout the spine, kind of a little bit overall, I would say that the spine is very stiff. A little bit of overlap in the upper spine, I would say, would go a long way with this. And then just kind of fixing that issue where we're getting a read on the hips as being tilted would be my main goals, my main places where I would work further on this. Now, as far as this being a girl, I think that it has a lot of the kind of like lightness that you would kind of need. But for me personally, I would just take that Y arc, all right, and just plateau it just a little bit more, right? Just a little bit more of a plateau on her Y arc, so she leaps on the little bounces, just a normal parabolic arc, but then on the big ones, kind of like pop up like a gazelle and then return back to earth. I didn't want to give that hint to everybody as being what I think would really kind of dictate this being a little bit more feminine of a jump, but I do think that kind of like weightlessness is a key part of it. So we'll see how many kind of clued into that fact. But this is great work, Anthony. Good job. Let's give him a round of applause. Very cool. Very cool indeed. Indeed. Robert and Ayah, another regular. Okay, very promising. Just a few things. First of all, she almost feels like, because her feet are coming down very straight, that there is a line. There's a line coming down, and that as she goes from foot to foot, that it's almost like a table like action, where like the legs are just like coming straight down. And why that's a problem is I feel like as in control as you could possibly be, as athletic as you could possibly be, you would always kind of have just a little bit more left to right on each foot, which would propagate up through the spine and make all sorts of very subtle but interesting things happen in the body. Whereas yours, again, it's almost like those legs are going straight down underneath her, and each time she impacts, nothing really, in terms of just like a breath of torque, nothing really happens in her body. Okay, that's my overall kind of note. Her chest is rotating towards the foot that's lifting, okay, and that's fine, but that's not a reaction to the impact on the ground. It's more of kind of like her. It almost looks like purposeful in the way that it's very, very energy inefficient. It almost looks like part of like a workout, like that you bring your knee up to your chest almost. It kind of has that much inefficiency built into it. So it's certainly not reaction, okay? I do appreciate the arms being out here and kind of locked and stiff. I was wondering how many we're going to see, and we still may see some, where the arms are like swinging like a windmill, and just to see like, you know, like where on what side of the fence everybody kind of like landed. But in general, I mean, especially she looks like she's working out at the gym, especially like those gym jump ropes, those weighted jump ropes, and especially an adult. You know, you do keep it actually like really almost as stiff as you can. So I do like that a lot. And then the last thing is the head being on isolate. If it's not on isolate, it looks like you animated it, you like counter animated it to be on isolate. I feel like it's a little too much like a chicken, because if you just go like this, if you just cover up the entire body and just look at the neck and head, there's really kind of a lot of up and down movement that the only reaction to it is kind of like a forward jut of the chin, and that always kind of like, you know, starts feeling like a bird a little bit. I feel like if she was a little bit straighter, maybe if you took a little bit out of that rotation that she's doing in her chest, and just had like that impact, just do some simple overlap on the chin instead of this counter rotation, this counter animation that you're doing with the chest and then the neck. It would bring it back a little bit more into our realm. But yeah, in general, still a very, very strong effort and well on its way. So good job. Let's give Robert a round of applause. Very cool. All right, up next, Eugene Sasu. Okay, so here's like one that's like I was just saying, like the younger, very, very, you know, kind of like rambunctious and full of energy jumping rope where the arms like kind of like go like this. It's a huge contrast to like, you know, the gym jump rope, or, you know, you imagine like the boxer before the match, you know, just with that tiny little motion. So this is very cool. I would say that there is a timing issue with the legs. It almost seems as though the body's kind of being pulled off of the ground, and the legs kind of react to that. Like this doesn't feel like enough of a push off the ground to get her as high as she's going. You see it, like, especially like right here. Like, see how hard she comes down. She straightens out and points her toes and touches the ground, and then takes this big impact. All right. So ostensibly, you know, because you kind of have the same arc coming down as you do going up, right? That kind of how physics works. Ostensibly, we should go from this pose at least to like this pose and then this pose on the way up. Like, this should look close. I mean, it's not exact, of course. Please don't quote me on this. But see how over these 3 frames she goes from pretty far bent down to straight up. Okay, so that was backwards. Now when we go forwards, she's bent over. Actually, you could count this as the first frame. It's bent over, slightly less, you know, bent over, but she's still on her toes. Very slightly less bent over, still on her toes. And now her legs are straight, but her toes kind of just started coming off the ground. Do you see the problem there? The amount of energy that it takes. I mean, when you push down, you're really actually pushing against the earth, right? And the earth, I mean, just because of physics, the earth actually, when you jump off the ground, the earth actually travels down, right? It's such a infinitely small amount that it's impossible to measure, but that's how gravity works, right? So you're pushing down. Imagine her pushing down, thrust to get off the ground, more than you're concerning yourself with, you know, like the timing of her actually doing each jump. And what you might find, if that's your workflow, is that your jumps feel a lot like heftier. Your jumps feel a lot more like the character is like really like putting everything they can into each leap. But you can dial back from that so easily, right? You can just take a frame or 2 out of it. You can make them not dip so far down in their knees. But I think that is probably a better approach for you, Eugene, to try. Because right now, like I said in the very beginning, it looks like she's almost being pulled off the ground, right? And as her feet like leave the ground, then all of a sudden they're like almost like panicking, like, oh yeah, I pushed off, and then they're like kicking backwards almost. So it's like getting pulled off and then kick backwards and then land hard, get just like lifted off the ground, kick backwards, land hard. Okay, it's you almost need the opposite approach. You need to push hard, kick backwards, and land softly. It would be a better, you know, if you're going to err on one side of it, it would be that. Okay, so decent nonetheless, very decent nonetheless. Also pretty cool jump rope rig. Looks pretty cool, man. And then in terms of like kind of like the femininity, I think that the way her arms are cycling could be, you could work on the arc of that a little bit so that it looked a little bit more effortless. It really seems like a super heavy rope because there's a lot of poses where we get a nice clean read of kind of like a bent elbow, which is like a strong pose, especially if you're rotating your arms, and we continue to see kind of like that bent elbow. It seems very, very, very strong. Whereas if it was just a little bit more loose and we had, you know, like a nicer, smoother kind of like pose change as it comes around, and even like I just did, see how like I kind of like whip it as on the downward swing as well. Just like little things that you can do to make it look a little bit more effortless, and I feel like a little bit more feminine here. Still though, still very good. I'm glad you're a part of the AnimGym. Thank you, Eugene. Good job. Cool. Monica. Okay. Cool, another double bounce. To me, Monica, this doesn't feel like the right speed for the rope. Again, that's the difficulty with the double bounce is the double bounce actually happens a lot faster in real life than I think you realize. It really feels like her hands come to a complete stop, and even if that is how maybe the rope looks like, or the hands look like in your reference, we always need to kind of like take on a little bit more of an attractive kind of arc there. So first thing, and it's not helping you that your staging is making it so that we have a perfectly profile view, so like nothing being kind of described in silhouette on this arm, and then almost a perfect foreshortened arm on the other arm, so that nothing is being described in silhouette kind of along this arm. This is kind of a little bit of a perfect storm of like silhouette problems. The pose that it stops on, so it kind of has that posing and that timing issue like right in this area. Okay. Eugene, though, take a look at what Monica did here, because she has kind of the thing that I was talking about, where it looks like the concern is with, here's the lowest frame, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and on 3 she's off the ground, right? So there's not that pose change where the toes start pointing and it almost looks like the feet are like nailed to the ground and she's just being lifted up. It actually feels like a push off the ground. And I really like, Monica, how plateaued that arc is in Y. I think you did nail the weightlessness of the body, though, in Y. So despite kind of like what I feel is a little bit of a timing error in the for the rope, because the arms do stop, and the posing error that you have in the arms, if I watch just the lower body, it really does feel like a nice, weighty, but still very kind of like elegant and fluid feminine jump. I am really impressed with the feeling of that. Okay. It looks like you have a little bit of animation on the head here, and maybe even a little bit in the face. I wouldn't do anything so much as like, if you have like a jaw control, this is just like a rule of thumb for everybody. Be very careful putting like physics into the face when it's not like featured, when the character's like not going to be looked at like for that. Does that make sense? You don't want to like jaw overlap in general would not be a part of a run cycle or a jump rope cycle or whatever, just in general, because we can keep our mouths closed while we're doing something. Now, if she's breathing through her mouth and she's doing that jump and things are getting really, really, really crazy, yeah, I can imagine a little bit on there, but she seems pretty in control, and like on the jump it looks like she's opening her mouth a little bit, and on the land she's opening her mouth a little bit. Or I might be wrong. It might be just we're just getting finally getting kind of like a clean read. But to me it feels like animation on there. I might be wrong. You can tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong. Also, it looks like where you could put like a ton of overlap and a lot of kind of like go overboard and make things like super exaggerated, and you can always get away with it, is like the ponytail. There's a little bit of like a flicker on the ponytail in this section. Right here. Like it kind of just like pops right there. And it looks like it felt like you were about to begin like some really awesome, super flappy floppy ponytail action, which I would love to have seen. Don't be afraid of that. Put that in, and that's easy to tone down as well. Another rule of thumb, anything that is easy to tone down, put it in your first version that you're showing like a director or whatever, put it in exaggerated and leave it exaggerated. Maybe don't do that first pass where you kind of like self-edit and self-critique and tone things down to where you think they're supposed to be. Show the exaggerated version of those kinds of things to the director for first pass. All right. It's also something called the I almost said sleeping dog, but I don't know what it is now. Not red herring. Maybe it's red herring as well. But my pal who used to do commercial work for clients would always put in this this model of a sleeping dog in the background of every single thing that he made. And he said, that what would always happen was, you know, the clients would say like, oh, this is all fantastic, we love it so much, but you know what, that sleeping dog in the back is really cute, but just take him out because it's not on brand, or it's not like we didn't ask for it or whatever. And and that was just his ploy, because if they're looking at the sleeping dog, they're not looking at, you know, like overlap on the hips or whatever. They're focused on this like thing that came out of nowhere. So we shouldn't always try to get the better of our supervisors all the time, but if you do want them to comment on something and you want a little bit maybe of a relaxed eye on other things, maybe over exaggerating like the ponytail is a good idea, because you turn it in and they're like, whoa, tone that ponytail way down, and they feel like they've already you know, given you something to you know, a piece of critique already, like, oh, he already has a note, let's give him like 1 or 2 more notes and send him back, or send her back to work. Anyway, cool, Monica, thanks a lot. Round of applause. Oh, Bonds, I forgot your bed. That's why you're bothering me. My poor dog. His dog bed's downstairs. Okay, Giselle. Let's see what we have here. Another double bounce. She's returning to Earth like very fast. I know what it is. You know what it is? It's the landing is happening, and she's able to get her legs totally straight, and this pose change and back up, this betrays how low the double bounce is. If she was able to land, reverse course, and pop up almost as fast as she came down. I'm looking at just her hips. Forget what the legs are doing, because the legs are kind of tricking the eye. If you look at just her hips, they come down almost nearly the exact same, or they go back up nearly the exact same speed as they come down, but then they kind of decelerate up into there. So it kind of is a little bit of a trickery that you're doing, and as much as I like a plateaued arc on the double bounce, it kind of makes it feel like that gravity is constantly changing on your character. It's kind of how it feels. You would need to just insert like 1 or 2 frames into the middle part of the double bounce, or not have her pop up so fast. Okay, that's what it is. It's very springy. She's very springy in that moment. The arms feel ultra IK-ish. Ultra IK. They're very, 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 very floating. Especially like right here where they both max out. And it's just like all we're getting is kind of like this like hand rotation at the end of kind of like almost looks like locked IK controllers. This is I was very, very happy. I mean, I didn't think of any of these things, honest to be, you know, upfront with you guys. I didn't think of any of these things that were going to come up, but I'm really glad they did. Like, this is like a really difficult IK moment to wrangle as an animator, because you have such broad up and down motion that the arms are going to be just like really fighting you like at every moment to not max out, but then if you move them back within range to not feel like they're like floating. Okay, the angle is also a little bit weird as well. I feel like pretty much the entire time your palms are up when you're jump roping, pretty much the entire time. Okay, and yours kind of do this rotation almost like doing the like swimming, like a freestyle, right? Just in terms of like the angle that those hands are taking. I don't feel that that's the way arms work, and to me it's not an issue of like preference. It really does feel like there is kind of like one way to do that. So that might have been something you missed in your reference, or I don't know, just in the interest of maybe being a little bit different, you tried it. I don't think it's working. To me, it's distracting. Just a word about texturing your character uniquely. These pants are so low cut. I think you might have wanted to pick like one higher edge loop to make these these little yoga pants. They're almost like leggings. It's a little funny to look at. Anyway, that's not really important stuff. And I'm picking out one frame where her head looks like it's hitting a wall forward. Oh, that's what it is. Actually, it's when it goes back. Okay, so it's this frame. So see how it's coming down, and then it's going back up quickly, right? So it's coming down, and it goes back up quickly, but then it actually is like a lot of backwards motion. And then it stays in that kind of like that vertical plane, and then shoots forward again. So the effect is a pretty serious jerking back and forth of the head. Cool. Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Keep it up, Giselle. Where are my keys? James Robotham. I don't know how to say your last name. I'm pretty certain that I mispronounce it every single week. Cool. Definitely has a lot going for it. It has that kind of like tension in the arms. This is obviously like the adult, like the working out kind of jump rope, right? It has the side to side that I was asking for in Robert's animation. For me, there could be more going on in the hips, especially in the rotate Z. So a little bit of kind of like impact and like that hip raising on each impact. I think would be good. She feels. It almost feels, this is a compliment, okay, so don't take it the wrong way. It almost feels very mocappy in the chest. Like the upper torso, I mean, so like the chest and shoulders. Because there is kind of that small, quick movement in there. It feels very realistic, and I would say that, you know, I meant that as a compliment for sure. It's good that you have that in there. I wonder if the size could be a little bit bigger in like the, because what it looks like is happening, it looks like there's two turns happening. It looks like in air, it's like she's moving this way and landing, turn this way. And then on this jump, it's like turning this way and then this way. So almost is like two turns on each jump a little bit. It's like microscopic, actually. And if that's a cloth simmed headphone wire, that's a nice touch as well. I can't tell if it's cloth simmed. It's a little low res for me to be able to totally tell. Areas of improvement. I would look for. I would make her foot reach out to the ground a little bit more. It feels like it kind of like stops at about like 60% right here and locks I would just carry that through as she's coming down, just still have it extending more. And if it is extending already, just extend it more so that like the eye can pick it up. Just a hair, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And if the back foot, as the back foot lands, it's a little soft. You're having it start on the toe and then do like a reverse foot roll, so the heel goes down. It looks like it's taking you 2 frames or 3 frames to do that. I would do it in 1 frame, maybe 2 frames. Just a slightly harder impact, on that back foot. Again, nice tension in those arms, and I really like the timing and the speed of that jump rope as well. Yeah, I'm just looking for more in the hips. Overall, just a little bit more in the hips. Very, very cool though. I would say so far, from what I've seen, this is the closest to what I would imagine would like go like in like a, you know, like Wii Sport, Wii Fit or whatever. Like this is kind of like really like along a line of that kind of like realistic video game animation. And it's very solid. Very solid. Good job. Let's give him a round of applause. Jeff Rappis. Oh boy. Jeff with your gigantic renders each week. Ooh, oh, fancy pantsy. Okay. Right off the bat, same kind of thing with the hand pose. I feel like the wrists need to be, hands need to be tilted a little bit more up. Having a little bit of knee pop issue. It looks like the legs are maxing out in air just like a few times and wiggling and jiggling, especially the screen right knee is doing that. It looks like both of the legs, or both of the feet, are landing toe first, and you're doing the reverse foot roll thing that we just saw with James's, and I would give you the same piece of advice with the heel. It looks like you have almost like overlap in the chest. I'm not sure if you have like individual like boob controls, but you know, they kind of telegraph. You know, a woman's chest kind of like telegraphs the positioning and the like the rotation, the orientation of the chest. It kind of almost looks a little bit like you were trying to animate it for the maximum impact of like her chest kind of being like overlapping with the motion of the of her up and down. That being said, it's kind of slow in the chest, right? So with a woman with gigantic breasts that is like doing this big motion, you would imagine like all the weight of her chest is kind of like slowing things down, and it's going to be very overlapped. If you don't have like chest, I don't think I would imagine AM wouldn't put boob controls on their characters. So I'm just gonna take that as the way it is. So you've animated the chest control as if there are a lot bigger boobs, like more weight attached to it than there actually is. I guess that's what I'm saying. It looks like a girl trying to, comment right here in the chat, Stella's showing off. It kind of does feel like a little bit like a girl showing off her chest. Now, if this is your attempt to kind of go a little bit into character and make it so that this is, like maybe your idea was, hey, I think this is a girl with a, with like a little bit of a complex. Maybe she's at the gym and she's really trying to like impress the guys, and she's like, hey guys, look at me. Maybe that's your character that you created. And that's fine too. So you know, I'm just going to give the note that the chest is animated with like way too big of overlap and slow overlap for kind of her physiology, is what I would say. Take a look up here at that ponytail. Who was that? Was it Monica? And see how it really, you know, really adds a kind of like a playfulness and a really nice dynamic in the silhouette. I'd like it if the whole thing could overlap. I'm not sure if you have a control that controls like a little bit further down, but it seems like it's very stiff, and it's almost a little bit unnerving that we have a little bit of a tangent here, just a little bit, where it almost looks like her jawline goes into her ear, it goes into her ponytail, and like it's all one object. In fact, if you squint your eyes and watch it, it really actually feels like your ear, like the ponytail is attached to the bottom of her ear, and that's a tangent issue. Okay. I really like the crossover. It's really cool. I'm glad you tried that out. I love the speed of it. It's a very fearless speed that you animated that with, that whipping into shape. I wouldn't change anything about that. Great job. Last thing I'll say, though, is that I'm kind of having the same problems with the elbows, especially the screen right elbow popping and kind of like wiggling, and it almost like clicks back into place after the crossover as well. And in fact, in the crossover, especially like in these frames right here, that screen right elbow is really having a hard time staying still. Okay, you gotta really have it stay still, because like I was saying with whose was it? I can't remember, but the tension that's right there. I mean, that's really how it kind of works. It turns a you know, a stiff arm into moving like kind of almost entirely with the chest. And it's hard to do with an IK controller, isn't it? Because you have to range it so meticulously. So getting that tension is actually pretty cool, pretty important. But yeah, it starts with calming those elbows down. Overall, very cool though, man. Yeah, I'm already seeing, Jeff, some improvement in your animation in just the AnimGym work that I've seen of yours. So keep it up, okay? Cool. Round of applause. Julian Howard. Now, I don't want to miss anybody, okay? So, coming up, we have Mike Freestone, Nicole Bloom, Tim Sorman, and Wojciech Pankowski. Oof. I'm sorry I butchered that. If I didn't call your name and you turned one in, please let me know, okay? So that I don't, I get an email every single month. Hey, you missed me. I can't remember who I missed last month, so I hope I didn't miss you this month. Okay, here we go. Wojtek. Oh, right, because J is, yeah. Wojtek. Julian, so what I love is the very overdone kind of side to side in the feet. But it's not really kind of supported at all with the way that her body's moving. Cover up the feet, or cover up the legs, all the way up to her shirt. And what you basically end up with is a very standard kind of, you know, up and down movement. In general, you should be able to tell what the feet are doing by what the upper body is doing. Like, you can tell that I'm shifting my weight back and forth just by the tiny little bit of rotation and mostly translation that's happening, right? It's an imperceptible almost rotation that's happening, but there's rotation happening as well, right? Mostly translation, though. You know exactly what's going on. You can tell. So we can tell as well. The way you test your animation, if the body is connected and working together, is cover up each side and see if you can tell what the other is doing. And there's a little bit of disconnection in this character's body. I'm not saying that this is not possible. It obviously is. I think with, you know, a little bit of practice, I could probably do a reference pass that looked a little bit like this, but a little bit more natural. But that's not what we should be aspiring to. We shouldn't say like, yeah, I could probably move like this if I tried, right? You should say, you know, this is how this would probably go. What I like is that the knees are, when she's landing, are pointing a little bit to the side. It's not just a straight on jumping and then the knees are forward and jumping and the knees are forward. I do like how the knees are twisting. All that says to me though is that there should be even more twist. Way more in Z, but even some twist in Y on the hips as well when she lands. Okay, so just overall kind of 10,000 foot view of this shot is disconnection between the lower body and the upper body. Okay. I would offset that everything that's happening in her spine. I would offset by like 4 frames. I feel like everything needs to just be kind of like a little bit more behind the up and down action. It seems like they're almost twinned. It feels like almost like her back is extended at its maximum at the height of the jump. So everything is happening just like almost twinned. So I would calm that down. The screen right arm for some reason is moving way quicker than the screen left arm. It's almost like she's like hitting herself almost. Well, I mean, that's the effect in silhouette because you're using up all of your negative space in short time. And then the just a little bit more work on the arc there. It's okay if you don't have the arms like kind of like straight up to the side like some of your other animators friends have done. It's okay if it's a little bit down or you're doing a little bit more of like kind of like a circle. But just work on the arc just a little bit. The net effect of what you've done here is that the screen right arm looks like it's like banging left and right, and the screen right arm is doing that, and then the screen left arm is almost staying completely still, almost. Okay. Still though, don't get me wrong, very strong, very strong. I feel like everybody is doing a little bit too slow, like they're landing on their toes. I feel like the heels are coming down just a little too slow for everybody. Yeah, just a little too slow. If you look at it, those heels, they really feel like hydraulic powered, like they have like the weight of the world on them, and they still just like easing her into the ground. I would speed that up. Okay. Okay. Cool. I think that's my last comment. I'm fine with like the neck and head. I think that is a lot more. One of the first ones we watched, I said it looked like a chicken. I think with kind of like the adult version of the jump rope, it would be stiffer, and I'm actually fine with erring a little bit on the side of stiffness with the adult version, where you're kind of like just like, you know, keeping your head facing forward and not letting that impact really propagate all the way up through your head. I would say that that's probably the better side to err on with the more realistic approach. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Julian. Round of applause. Yay. Mike Freestone. Ooh. And again, the ponytail shows up in full force. It's funny. It's the first thing I just talked about, like throwing out red herrings, and the first thing that I commented on was the ponytail hair. The most major issue is that the body is not moving up and down enough, and the wrists it sort of feel like they're almost mixing in the air, not like they're actually connected or connected to the same thing moving in this direction. Okay, it almost feels like pom-poms in front of her more than it does like actually something going like over and then back again and then over. Okay. Really, it's a very simple fix. You just need to tuck in those elbows a little bit more, bring the arms out, and don't do so much with just the rotation in those wrists. All right, stiffen the wrists just a little bit, maybe reduce them by half, that rotation, and then use the shoulder and the elbow to just kind of like fill in that gap. Okay, something like that. Okay. And then, but definitely probably the most major issue with this as a full body exercise is that her hips, or cog or root or whatever you want to call it, are not moving up and down enough. I mean, again, I bet you could do this as a jump rope if you tried really hard, but a much more natural approach to these AnimGym tests is advised, simply because you're going to probably encounter 1,000 things in your career eventually that you've never done before, and you're going to have to animate them as if you've done them all your life and you're an expert at jumping rope, right? Animators, we always have to become experts on everything. We end up knowing more about how the client's product works, or the character moves, or whatever, even than the creators do. And it's kind of cool that we end up with all this kind of like focused esoteric knowledge, but same time it gets exhausting. I never thought I would forget any of the things that I had learned about water when I worked on this project for 8 months. It was basically an entire museum filled with this character that was a water drop, and I learned everything there is to know about water and aquifers and transportation and sanitation and all that stuff. I can't remember a thing about it now. But I digress. Her head also looks like it's moving almost kind of like just like opposite to the motion of her body. I can't tell if it's forward 8 frames or backwards 8 frames, but the motion in her head seems like it's just opposite to the body. So it would need to be offset to join it back to what's going on. For the size of the up and down motion in the body right now, the shoulders are way too big. They're moving far too much. But that's the size that this is right now. Once you get her jumping up and down, like double or triple the height that she gets, then those shoulders are going to be the right size. So maybe this is a lesson for everybody in terms of workflow, moving or making adjustments and hitting notes on the full body is super advised, because you wouldn't want to tone down these shoulders to make them look good with what you have right here, and then only to go on later and have to put a lot of motion back in again, would you? Yeah, it's got a lot going for it. Don't get me wrong. With a little bit of, with about an afternoon, you could probably take take this to 90%, I would say, if you're really focused and you work on the big things first, and then work on the things like I said, like tucking those elbows, putting the motion more in the shoulder and elbows for the jump rope, and that kind of thing, and then work on the head. So yeah, just make sure, Mike, that you're in the forums, you're showing this off a lot, you're taking notes and giving feedback, okay? Just make sure that you're participating, like, really fully in the AnimGym, and you'll go far. There's a lot of potential here. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Mike. Giselle, you got a crit. This is recorded, so fear not. You can watch the replay and get the crit, okay? Nicole, trusty Nicole. Hey Nicole, I think this has definitely the. It's funny I think we had the same problem last week, where where I sped up the animation. Wasn't that yours? Here's double speed. Here's 1.5. Yeah, I like it a lot more at like 1.5 to double speed than what we're getting at one-time speed. It also looks like the rope is decelerating downwards. It looks like it's slowest at the top. I'm sorry, slowest at the bottom, and then over the top, it kind of like really gets over quickly, and then slows down underneath her. It's making it look like she's jumping way too late for the jump rope, because when our eye catches it, it catches it up here. Okay, oops. Our eye catches this jump rope coming around the horn up here. Okay. And then when we get a read of that, we see, okay, it's coming over really quickly. She better get ready to jump. And then she doesn't. And she still doesn't and still doesn't. And then we start noticing, oh, it's like slowing down. And then she does her kind of like slow jump over it. And then it speeds up again and comes over again. And the whole process repeats itself. That's what I feel is happening. Especially in like the 45-degree angle forward. It's traveling very fast. And then kind of like slows down so that she can kind of get over it. In a way, it kind of feels like you've timed the jump rope to her. And I'm not sure which workflow I would use, but I would, if I had to go back and give everybody, you know, the best advice from what I've seen in these tests, now that I've seen them, it would be that you probably have 2 tests to start. One would be where you have a timed jump where you know this is when the jump is going to happen, and then you kind of make it so that the animation on the upper body, arms, and then the rope is kind of explaining that. And then the other is you kind of start with, okay, this rope actually needs to get by, and let me kind of like feel out how that's moving, and then kind of like have almost react as the character of this rope coming, and then start timing that anticipation, the bending over, and then the jump off the ground, and play with the timing. I'm doing this way too slowly, it looks stupid, or I'm not, or the rope is hitting the character, all right, this needs to be earlier. So I would say probably going back, it would be not a waste of time to start 2 shots like that. Take an hour on each one and just see which one is kind of giving you a more natural looking jump over a rope that's really there. Okay, because if I cover the rope and just like cover her arms and look just at her body, she's kind of doing kind of a cute little jump. Let me speed it up though. In fact, this is actually very interesting. Sped up and trying my best to ignore what's happening above her head. In fact, I can make this a little bit more elaborate. Here we go. I'm covering the top, and now I'm going to look through my fingers. Oh, perfect. Okay. I'm looking at just from the top of her head down to underneath her feet, and I don't get her arms. She actually does look like she's jumping over a jump rope. As soon as I add the rope back again in her arms, it feels like, again, that it's decelerating on the bottom, even at this speed. So the first thing I would do is I would speed this all up, and then I would kind of go back into the timing of those arms, hands, subsequently the rope, and make that a little bit more kind of the opposite of what it is now. So it would actually be decelerating on the top and quickly going underneath. Okay, cool. Thank you. Rock on. Rock on as always. Oh, I got some schmutz on me. Okay. Oh, what a treat. Look at this. What a treat. Oh, this is Tim's. Of course. So, of course. Cool, man. Tim, I'm going to kind of be a little bit more pickier with you. It's not as feminine to have all of that crazy stretching in the chest. I would say that the legs are probably a little bit more where you would put that kind of like cartoony expression of yourself in there, because it kind of looks a little bit like strong, like, you know, Solid Snake military, you know, stomping legs in the end with this kind of almost gelatinous body on top, just a little bit. Okay, so for me, I would say that definitely going into the legs for that cartoony expression would be advised. Also, when she lifts her legs up off the ground, I would definitely expect her to be almost pointing her toes the whole time. And not let her feet kind of get into this flat up here. Like almost ever. I would expect that we would just like kind of like keep this, you know, almost ballet like pointed toe, and just like keep it very, very, very you know, graceful and elegant on the top there, especially on those you know, slow into that like apex pose up there, because that's the cleanest read we're going to get of that silhouette. So I would make this, you know, I would make double sure that you're getting kind of an elegant kind of image up there, okay, and not this flat foot thing. Everyone, please notice how Tim timed. Nicole, this is kind of what I was talking about with you. Everyone, please notice how Tim timed the arms like flawlessly, where the jump is kind of like timed with that deceleration of the arms up into here, and it whips them. It like really whips that rope underneath in time for the character to land again. Loving that, and a great arc as well. A really awesome arc. You know, a character 2D would love to come in on this shot and then do the rope that is kind of, you know, explained by this awesome animation. So just another kind of reminder to you guys of how stuck you'd be if you started to try to make like this really super elaborate rope rig, and instead of animating your character really well. So I just want to point that out. As his foot comes down, it kind of points its toe again, and I only noticed after watching it right here a few times that you're having her land on her toes, and that's fine as well. But what you might want to do is consider, you know, a kind of even more delayed. So your pose would be, so your knee pose would be even more kind of backwards than even I drew it before, so that you can get that really nice kind of even long arc that's like nice and like contrast that even spacing like with that that nice plateau that you have on her Y arc, right? I love seeing that contrast within the pose, within the character rather. So this is just like nice and slowly extending as she starts coming down, and you have that pointed toe out here then, and then it lands on the ground, kind of almost the way you have it. Morpheus kind of has like pretty serious boot feet, so it's kind of hard to make them super elegant at all costs. But yeah, this is very strong. I mean, I'm not totally against the cartooniness and the stretch in the spine. I would probably do it about half as much as you did, but I would think that a little bit more in the legs, since women are so like hippie, would be at least an easier place to implement it, if not more successful, at least easier. Yeah, but everyone should take a look at this like flawless timing on the arms. It's exactly what it needed to be on this. Let's give Tim a round of applause. What a treat. Thank you, Tim. Good stuff. And now, Wojtek Pankowski. Man, it took me a second to remember. Who's Obama? Seriously. Oh, interesting. Wojtek, this is very interesting. I like the I really like the asymmetry. I like the movement, the left and right. I would say that the first jump from either side is the more successful. Does that make sense? Each jump from left to right is the most successful of all of them. After the first jump from one direction, one side to the other, you have a little bit of the same problem of the hips being pretty straight, and you're coming straight down on that leg, and it kind of feels like something's missing because she would just tip over if her hips were straight. She's coming straight down on one leg. That's why we have to have two legs on the ground, or we have to shift our weight off of the leg to lift it up, right? That's just how the body works. So without shifting the weight at all, jumping up and down on a foot, it's very cumbersome. So, but going from one side to the other, like that one jump is super successful. I almost wish it was like this, and then like this. Boom. Let's see if I can do this. Boom, 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 boom. You see how nice that is? There's just that little bit of rotation in the hips. There's a perfect amount of side to side in the body. I really like how the foot is searching out the ground with the extension of the toe. This really nice range right there. Because as creatures that are constantly searching for like the lowest energy expended to do anything, we would probably not lift our legs super high off the ground, if we were jumping rope naturally like she is, right? So I really like how the foot does search out for the ground right here. So watch this foot, guys. See, it's coming, and then it's coming down, and you see how it really actually reaches for the ground right there? That's really cool. Really cool stuff. It really feels like you got nice tension in those arms. I like the arcing on those elbows. You have them under really nice control. It seems like you're trying to do a little bit too much with the wrists. You have the exact same timing as Tim did, so like the timing is right, but it's like all too much in the wrists alone. Other parts of the body have to come on board and help those wrists out to swing that rope around. Just a little bit more maybe in the elbows, I would say, and you're in good shape. She seems a little bit, I'm not sure if this is the model or just the controls, but she seems a little bit like her shoulders are up too high the whole time. I would just bring them down in general, just for that female, just like for a female silhouette, just in general. And then maybe animate them just a little bit more as well. Nice secondary motion on the hair and stuff. It's really cool. You could probably offset it 1 or 2 more frames because it is kind of twinned with her hands. Maybe 2 frames. Cool. Cool. Maybe, and this is not a requirement, but maybe for just a little bit of extra spice, you could put some Rotate Z in her head so that when she's hopping over to this side, there's kind of just a little bit of tilt in her head. And then as she comes over to this side, she kind of like telegraphs that she's changing direction with her head as well, right? So it turns and kind of like takes her back over. That might be a fun thing. Again, not a requirement, just kind of like a fun thing to add on top. Okay? Cool. Did I miss anybody? Is there anybody here that I missed? Now, some people came late. So I got Anthony, Robert, Eugene, Monica, Giselle, James, Jeff, Julian, Mike, Nicole, Tim, and Wojtek. If I missed anybody, I'm really sorry. And you're watching this replay, please just send me an email. I've been pretty good, I hope, about sending makeup crits, but I'm really proud of everybody. Once again, thank you for watching. This is the AnimGym Critique Webcast. The AnimGym is on kennyroy.com. It's free to join. Just go into the forums. If you want a critique like these people, then just get a kennyroy.com membership. The critique comes free with your monthly membership, and you also get access to about 2 months of content, which includes lectures, video, mails, articles, and more. This was a lot of fun. You guys have been kicking butt. I'm super proud of you. Just keep up the hard work, okay? The AnimGym was kind of like a pie in the sky idea. I didn't know if anyone was going to do it. You guys are really impressing me, not only with the work, but your commitment to getting better, okay? So nothing more I can say except just, keep kicking butt. And as always, rock on.